Hi everyone, and welcome to another Exploring Creativity session. We've looked at the work of Picasso, the Picasso, Pablo Picasso. I've forgotten all the rest of his names. He has like about 10 names. He's got like 10 middle names or something. A very controversial figure, complete genius, and very mixed in his styles. Very, very prolific, created like thousands and thousands of works of art, and is considered to be, if not the most talented artist of the 20th century. But we looked a little bit at his character, which was dodgy, to say the least, or mixed anyway. He was nice to his friends, but he was abusive to his intimate partners. Um, he also used to kind of take credit for inventing things like collage onto canvas, which was actually invented by the artist Braque, uh, and things like that. But it's indisputable that his work was really amazing and very groundbreaking, especially for its time. So I'm going to do a take on some of his portraits, some of his more abstract portraits, and I'm going to show you how to do a self-portrait using a combination of blind contour drawing and cubist styles, using pencils, pen and ink pens, and also some ink and gouache. So I hope you enjoy today. There's more information in the links below, and I hope you enjoy this exercise. Okay, so I've got my mirror, my little mirror here, and I keep pencils and pens in a glasses case, which can be quite a useful way to carry them about. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna adjust my table slightly so that you can see both my paper and my me that I'm going to use as a self-portrait. Not a terribly flattering angle, but never mind. So what I'm going to start off with is blind contour drawing. So those of you who've come to my in-person classes, and I think I've probably done one on this in the YouTube as well, you will know that blind contour drawing is a method of drawing where there are two things that you have to do. You have to keep your pen or pencil in contact with the paper at all times, is the first rule. And the second rule is so not look at your drawing that you are drawing. So I'm just trying to get my light to be a bit better. That's better. So you are literally drawing blind. You're only looking at the subject matter, in this case yourself if you have a mirror, or you could probably copy what I'm doing looking at me if you want. And you do not look at the picture that you are actually drawing. And this is it's going to be difficult for me because I'm got to try and block out that side of the screen. But you basically it's pure observational drawing, 100% observation. Normally when we draw, it's the split second memory of what we're observing. So we're looking back and forth from the subject matter to our picture that we're drawing, and we're constantly making decisions about how it looks and whether we're doing it right and all this sort of thing. This takes all of that away. So it forces you to be completely unworried about the outcome of your drawing because you can't actually see it. And it's 100% observing. So you're just following the line of the subject matter with your eye and syncing your hand up with your eye as you work it across the paper, but without looking at your picture that you're drawing. So I'm going to make a start. So I'm using 8B, so it's a pretty hefty, dark, soft pencil. And I'm using also heavyweight rough watercolor paper because I am going to add some ink and gouache to it at some point. Um, and so as I'm drawing the lines, I'm going to have to press very hard to get through the texture of the paper to make a very smooth line. And you can look at the paper to start, decide where you're going to put your pencil, where you're going to make the first mark, but then you must not look at the drawing at all. So I'm going to, obviously my hair is quite a feature here. And there's no real time limit. You can work your pencil across quite quickly or relatively slowly. So, and then when you've finished, you can look. And that is the most fun part, to see how weirdly it's turned out. I mean, I absolutely love these drawings. Maybe if I look in the mirror, it'll look like I'm looking at you. I can't tell. But I really love these sort of drawings because they come out looking very incredibly quirky and strange, and quite, I think they're fantastic. And also it's a lovely exercise, like I say, because it forces you to just be free with what you're doing. So now I'm going to do in the cubist sense, because cubism is all about working from different angles and different perspectives on the same piece of paper, on the same page. And we know that Braque and Picasso were co-inventors of cubism. And Picasso kind of tends to be better known, but they both were experimenting with this technique. And in the lesson where we looked at Picasso in more detail, um, we found that even the idea of cubism may have come from his inspiration from African masks and African art, and he didn't really acknowledge that either in his professional life. So that's something to note. So I'm going to change the angle. I'm going to switch up the angle and do more of a, if I can, I wonder if I can still get me in it. Whoops. Ah, yeah, I'm going to go for more of a side profile. Now, will you be able to see? Yes, you'll be able to see what I'm drawing as well as me. So, and I'm going to do the same. So I'm going to do a blind contour drawing, but more of a side profile. Let me just adjust the light a little bit. And just draw it on top of my picture that I've just drawn. So then I'm going to kind of turn this picture into a cubist picture by adding inks and gouache and things, and make it colourful. I'm going to make it synthetic cubism piece. So analytical cubism, the colours were more muted. There were more squares and rectangles. It was more angular. Synthetic cubism had more curves. It was a little bit more free, and the colours were brighter. And I personally like that aesthetic. So I'm going to choose where I start, but so it's going to be made up of lots of different perspectives of uh, myself. I should call it something like the fragmented self or something. But anyway, so I'm just going to do another blind contour drawing. But this time I'm using a brush pen. So it might be a little bit clearer because the texture of the um, paper won't show through as much as it did with the graphite pencil. Okay, so you can see it's starting to take a very interesting shape uh, here. So I'm going to do another blind contour drawing on top of this, on top of these two. I'm going to use a different, a thin um, felt pen. And being aware, I am aware, but you're probably not because I haven't told you, the graphite pencil on this watercolor paper is not water soluble. You can get water soluble graphite, but this is not. But the ink that I'm using, the ink pens that I'm using, that is water soluble. And I'm aware of this, so it means that when I add my water and paint and ink to the work, these lines will dissolve depending on how much water, how much pressure, how much paint. But I'm just informing you of that so that you are aware of it, because it is going to influence what happens with my next steps. And some of the students in the live class are using oil pastel, and I think I might go and find one in a minute and use and do a little bit of that before I add the paint, because that will resist the paint and the water as well, and that'll be an interesting. So I was inspired. I'm always inspired by my students, always, and so that so I'm trying to find an interesting angle here. So that yeah, so that's something to think about as well. Right, so I'm going to do now from this angle, and I'm going to use this blue pen, and again I'm going to do another blind contour drawing. I'm actually going to look in the mirror directly, because that way I can avoid looking at because it's difficult to not, I haven't been looking across at it, but it's difficult to not see the, actually then I'm liking this angle more, so I'm gonna yeah, I'm just gonna ignore completely the actual drawing. So remembering to not look at your drawing that you're doing, just keeping your eyes on your subject the entire time, and remembering, I'm gonna have to stop talking because I'm about to draw my mouth, but remembering not to lift your pen off the paper or pencil, whatever you're using. Ooh, on paper. And sometimes as well, you'll forget, like I've forgotten whether I drew that other eye. So I'm going to draw it. So you might end up like with three eyes or something, because you're not looking at your page. You can't see what you've actually drawn, right? It's a very interesting technique. I love it. Okay, so there is that. And I'm glad I put in that eye, because that looks quite extreme. The other thing about this technique is that you can also use it as a starting point. So if for example, with this blue one I've just done, I actually really quite like that, how it's turned out. And if it was a picture on its own and I was going to then develop it and take it further, I would probably uh, wash out some areas but keep others. So for example, I really like the shape of the lips here, and I'm really pleased with how this eye turned out. And so what I would be tempted to do, if this was a like a regular drawing or a regular art, you know, not this experiment with cubism, is that I would build on uh, these areas that I'm pleased with, and sort of rework the other areas. And especially if you're working in pencil when you're drawing from the figure as well, you can then rub out certain areas and then keep other bits. And it's a really good starting point. Then you start to work in a normal, you know, in a regular drawing way, but using this as your groundwork and your foundation. It's quite it's interesting exercise. And then you also learn the subject because you're looking at it 100% observation through the blind contour drawing. You then are learning about what it looks like, and especially with figure drawing and life drawing, that's very helpful because you're kind of actually getting it ingrained in your mind of the proportion and how the figure is positioned and all this sort of thing, and it can really help. So even as a warm-up, doing a few of these, but also as well if you do decide to use them as a you know, for a starting point, it can be helpful. So I'm going to do another one over this side. I'm really liking this blue, so I'm going to keep this blue, and I'm going to do this more face on as a slightly different angle again. So here we go, and another blind contour drawing as well. Just because I want to be able to see my ear this time. Might try and draw that in, or will try and draw that in. You can also vary the pressure more if you're working in pencil. So keeping your pencil in contact with the paper at all times, but for example, when you're drawing a shadowy area, like where I've done the edge of the nose, for example, if you've got a pencil and you press much harder, slightly different in working in pen, but then, you know, where you're kind of connecting one bit up with another where there isn't any shadow, then you can sort of press more lightly, and then that will kind of mean that there are fewer of these connecting lines that maybe don't make much sense. I'm also exaggerating things like my eyelashes. The vein. And then, you know, you can draw things more than once. I'm going to go back over and draw the ear again just because I really like the shape of it. Add some more hair. This is probably going right across all the drawings. And it's the kind of thing that the more you practice, the better you get at it. So you know, I do believe that if I were to do this every single day, several times a day, I would end up with, you know, being able to get it really accurate. I mean, there are pockets of accuracy, you know, or interest, like in the first one I did with the eye here. the eye here, and even the eye here, the nose here. You know, there are pockets of accuracy, but I do believe that if you practiced this every single day really thoroughly, you would get better accuracy in your your blind contour drawings. And so I am going to do the last one. I know it's looking a bit of a mess, but when I go in with the paint and kind of work into it, it's going to change things. It's going to become, I mean, it is cubist, but it's going to become even more cubist. But I'm going to just do one, I think down here actually, in a very different color. And from again another different angle. Have I done that angle? Can't remember. I think I was facing the other way, wasn't I? Can't even tell from the drawing which way I was. Oh, was I facing that way? Yeah, so maybe I haven't done one facing this way. So I'm going to do one facing more this way. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it down here. Tricky to get the angles and everything right, but I'm going to, and I might even put some of the stuff in the background because it's cubist, so I might add some of my background in a minute. But I'm gonna get the lid off this pen. For a start. Right, let's, oh, I've lost my ear again. Come back here, come back here. Come back here. All right. Okay, get the hair right, get the ear in. Okay, let's do this. So, oh no, oh no, my brush is completely messed up. It got dried out because I left the thing was unscrewed. Gonna have to quickly go and get another brush. Sorry about that. Pen, I mean, one sec. So I've managed to get exactly the same kind of brush pen from my other hand. So here we go. Let's start again. Lost my ear again. Ear. Ear. Okay, so that was an interesting exercise. So now we have our bones of our cubist endeavor. I'm just going to lower the camera a little bit so that you're a bit closer into what I've done there, and how I'm going to work on it next is start to add paint, gouache paint, and oof, a bit of ink. Oh, and I was going to do, yeah, let me go and get an oil pastel. Hang on, I need to go just slightly higher, don't I? I'm just going to, I should pause while I'm sorting this out. Okay, so I've got my oil pastels. So what I want to do with these is kind of plan in some areas where the paper is protected from the paint and water that I'm going to put on, because when I put on the paint and water, it's going to blur up quite a lot because most of what I've used here is water soluble ink. I'm going to put in some of my background, and I don't know what I did with my, here is my mirror. So I'm just going to show you in the mirror what I've got in the background. Ah, I have got some nice works of art. Julia Madison, she's an artist, amazing artist, contemporary. And oh, where's it gone? There's one by one of my students who's also an artist. Well, all my students are also artists, but Dick Graham, there's a drawing by him, and I have this nice butterfly on my wall. So I'm going to select some bits from those. I'm going to just put some numbers in because of the clock. It's actually backwards on your screen, but I'm going to put some random numbers. So with cubism, you can really do it's quite free. You can really do whatever you want with whatever you're looking at. It's all about different angles, different perspectives. So I'm going to draw in the edge of the clock now, just this curve here. Obviously, original analytical cubism is more about making things into cubes. But synthetic cubism kind of let that go a little bit. So it wasn't so strict about the cubes, the cubes and rectangles and lines. And I personally am really into curviness in paintings, in artworks. And so, you know, I'm gonna keep those in. But actually what I might do is do an example of how to turn a butterfly into a cubist. Whoops. Oh, where's my butterfly? I'm in the way of it. Here's the butterfly. I'm going to turn the butterfly into a cubist butterfly. Okay, just to demonstrate to you how to do that. So I have got, I think this is permanent ink. I'm hoping this is permanent ink. If it's not, then that's a shame. I want it to be this cubist butterfly to be permanent. So you can see the butterfly, it's at a bit of an angle. Whoops, I'm trying to point at it right there on the screen. Okay, and so I'm going to turn it into a cubist butterfly by just focusing on the straight lines. Ooh, this pen is a bit iffy. No, it's okay. So this is an example of how to make something cubist. You're breaking it down into straight lines. I hope this is making sense for you all. We've got a little bit of a cubist butterfly there at the bottom. Just so we're aware that this is a cubist homage to, homage is probably the wrong word, inspired by Picasso and his cubist, his and Braque's cubist ideas. Okay, so there's that. And I think I'm going to leave it at that with the stuff from the background. I've got bits of numbers from a clock and a cubist butterfly and ooh, whoopsie. And then with these oil pastels, because the ones I use are very, very beautifully oily. In fact, they were created in collaboration with Picasso, Sennelier brand. I'm not getting any sponsorship or anything, but I just really love the quality of these. And they were actually created in collaboration with Picasso to make it more like oil paint. So they're very, very rich and highly pigmented, but also very smooth and oily. It's almost like drawing with lipstick, um, that kind of feeling. What that means is that lots comes off onto the page, and so I normally work it in a bit, but also pulling some off as I'm doing that, because otherwise your brushes can get very clogged up with the oiliness. So you can use either the back of a paintbrush, which is what I'm doing here, or you can use a cotton bud, uh, or you can use a Q-tip for those of you who are over the other side of the world in the America. Hello, if you are. Very nice to see you. So you can use, yeah, that, or even a bit of old tissue or a cloth, pretty much anything, or a cotton wool pad. I'll show you what happens when you use a cotton wool pad instead of the back of a paintbrush. Oops, you might want to sort of squish it into a pointy bit and then rub it on. It gives a more sort of blurry effect. Might blur things out a bit, but it also lifts off a bit more of the oil onto the, and you get a bit of cotton wool onto on the paper as well. It's a little bit less precise, but it's quite a nice way of doing it. So having done all that, I'm going to now move on to my painting bit. So I've got a bowl of water here, and I've got some various brushes. I'm going to start with a big brush, a large brush. And I'm going to just saturate my brush. It's hopefully quite clean. I'm just going to saturate my brush with water, and I'm going to start with seeing what happens when I just sort of blur up some of the ink that I've got on here. So if you remember, we started off with the graphite pencil blind contour drawing, which is now almost completely obliterated by the others. You can't really see it very well. But when I add this water, the others will start blurring up. And then it might bring up that one a bit more clearly, or it might not. This is actually turning into quite an interesting psychological piece, because the numbers, it's like time running out, or am I going to be late for work, or something. So, and how that might make you quite anxious, and then you kind of lots of different versions of yourself, of the one that's worried about being late and the one that doesn't care. I don't know. Anyway, when we were talking about Picasso, the idea that, you know, no one is all evil, are they really? There's like lots of different complexities to people. Nothing is black and white. So, because there's a lot of controversy around his treatment of his intimate partners and his abuse, and whether that means, can you like the work? Does that overshadow the genius of the actual quality of the art that he was creating, etc. So I've now blurred it all up a little bit. Hasn't really revealed anything of the original graphite, but that's okay. And now I'm going to start adding some ink. I'm going to put a little bit more water, because what I want to do is add some bright colours into the clock sections. And the good thing about using oil pastel on watercolor paper is not only does the oil pastel resist your it's called wax resist. Well, it shouldn't be called wax resist. You can use wax, you can use sorry, I'm just adjusting the lighting. You can use candles. You can use candles. Uh, sorry, I realized that was, I hope that's not on the video. That's covering everything up, hopefully not too badly. Yeah, you can use candles. That's why it's called wax resist. You can even use wax. You can drip wax on and all sorts of other things, but which would be a whole nother lesson. But the thing about it, if you do it in a circle or as I've done here, you know, along the edge, it acts as a barrier. So you could put loads and loads of really watery watercolor paint in this area, and as long as it won't go across naturally, it won't naturally flow across into the other wet areas. So if you're wanting to create uh you know, a line, uh a precise line, and you're working quickly and you don't want to wait for the paint to dry, if you've got the line in oil pastel or wax, it will create a barrier there, and it'll stop it from all blurring up if you don't want it to blur up. But anyway, I've got some ink here. It's quite a nice bright colour. It's Liquitex, which is acrylic ink. And what I'm going to do is it's a pipette thing. I'm just going to drop a couple of drops in each circle here. Actually, I'm going to do 3. Oh, and then that's gone across. I was going to do that anyway, but that's done it because I dropped it in. And I'm going to get some water in there. And I'm just going to show you that. So when you, it's actually so thick, probably because it's acrylic ink, it's actually, the wax resist is not as extreme as it might be. I'll show you how to bring it back. But first of all, I'm just going to show you what happens when you cross that line. You see, if you drag it across the barrier of the oil pastel, it does that where it blurs into. Oh, I love it. I love all that. And so I'm going back to my cotton wool, and I'm going to dab it and lift it off these numbers because the numbers have disappeared a bit. Oops. So you can do that. And if you don't like this speckledy effect, you can also use either a cotton bud or cotton wool or a rag or tissue to lift off. It's actually called lifting out. Lift off the ink or watercolor or whatever paint it is from you know, so you could get that completely smooth, that line, without any specklediness if you wanted. I quite like the specklediness, so I'm going to leave it speckledy. And so now this is all blurred up crazily, not really looking much like faces anymore. It's gone very abstract. What I'm going to do is I am going to firm up this cubist butterfly first of all. I've got some paint, watercolor paint left over on my palette from a previous thing. I'm going to mix a bit of black with quite a lot of dark blue, and it's going to take quite a while to work it up because I'm reactivating it from it was dried out from before, but I want this to be quite thick on my brush, so I'm going to take the time to work it up, work the pigment into the water that I've got on my brush, so to get it as fairly thick consistency, as thick as watercolor can be. Can watercolor be thick? It can be a strong consistency anyway. And I'm just gonna add some depth to this, but I want to leave you know, keep it sort of cubist. It's difficult for me because I really like working with curved lines, and I struggle a bit with the thing of something should be curved and it's not. That's the thing. Cubism is can be quite challenging in that way for me. And so then what I'm going to do next is I want to pick out some areas of the portrait to kind of make them more stand out more as a face, because they've got the facial features have got quite lost. And I've got this gouache that's ready mixed skin tone. It's called Permanent Pink, but you could make it easily by using white gouache mixed with a little bit of, say, alizarin crimson or some pink, and maybe a little bit of yellow in there as well to make it a bit warmer. So I'm going to use that. And mix some water into it. Thing about gouache is it's heavy bodied, so when you're looking at an old picture in a gallery, if it says that the medium was body color, that means gouache, because it changed its name. The medium, the name changed, and it's heavier bodied and chalkier than watercolor, so it runs about slightly less. It's a little bit more, it dries up more matte and a little bit more opaque as well, and it's a little bit more controlled, slightly less blurry aroundy. So I'm just going to add some lines just to bring it back a little bit to make it clear that this is a face, or these are faces. And then later on I might add some white gouache in places as well. Now I can't even see where the nose was on that one, and it had quite nice lips which I can't see anymore. So I'm just going to kind of make it up, or with a bit of what's there. I'm kind of filling in, and this is the thing about with Cubism, one of the things they did as well was they created these blocks of shape, and then maybe filled them in or made them, you know, interesting shapes or whatever. So I'm doing that a little bit. Kind of keeping within the lines, some of the lines of these shapes. Okay. And then I'm going to go back to my palette, where I have some of this dark green. Going to add some of the dark blue that I was using to the dark green to get it to be a bit of a dark bluey green. And then I'm just going to, I want to define these numbers a little bit. So I'm going to go around the edge with this dark green, knowing that that will blur in a bit to the pink, but less than if I'd done it straight away, because the pink is now starting to dry. Okay, and then I'm going to add some of this green for the eye color, even though my eyes are blue. But you know, artistic license, you're allowed to can do whatever you want. Um, a little bit of red. I want to put some color on the lips. So this is just carmine gouache, but you could use any kind of red. I'm also going to clean up my water because as you can see it's gone grey and it's going to it's going to dull the red. I want it to be bright. So I have cleaned up my water and I'm just going to add some to this red gouache. It's fairly washy, it's fairly watery. I'm just going to add it to the lips. There's a little bit of a flattering self-portrait going on here. I'm exaggerating the lusciousness of my lips a little bit here. And then I'm going to add some white. I couldn't find my gouache, so I'm going to use the white acrylic. The difference will be that white acrylic is much heavier bodied than gouache. It hasn't got any translucency. So it'll be more effective. It'll sort of stand out more. Um, so I'm trying to see some of the lines that have blurred up. I can still see them. I'm going to go over some of them. I think this ear turned out quite nicely, sort of down in the wrong place. That's very Picasso-esque, you know, where he has like ears coming out of the side of the head and all that. My theory is that he got bored with being so good at drawing and painting because he was really, really highly skilled from the age of 11 or younger. And so he just wanted to get into experimenting and doing more interesting, different things. But he was groundbreaking for his time. Um, and even his portrayal of women, like you could say he was a misogynist in terms of how he treated women in his life, or his friends apparently he treated well, but his intimate partners not well. Um, and but one article I read when I was researching him was interesting in that it pointed out that at the time women were portrayed in a very classical way with frilly dresses and parasols, and he was, you know, doing something very different in his portrayal of them. And, you know, some of the paintings of Gertrude Stein, for example, um, Lee Miller, they were portrayed as very strong, um, strong women. So it's, you know, I still don't like him, but just giving the other side to the argument there. Anyway, um, whoops. And so now it's just a question of how much you want to play with adding white. I don't want to overdo it. I don't want to overwork it. So I think I might just call it a day there, really. Um, and there you have it, a lined contour cubist Picasso inspired self-portrait. The fractured self. I hope you've enjoyed today, and I hope you return to another exploring creativity session. Thank you.